Hey guys, welcome back, and today I'm doing my August wrap-up, which I managed to read 12 books the past month, which pretty dang good, partly due to the fact the libraries are open again and I'm feeling more confident going and picking things up. And then I also participated in my first readathon, which was the Avatar The Last Page Turner Readathon, and I was able to complete the prompts. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first two books I'm going to briefly go over were Like a River Glorious, which was part of the Last Page Turner, which the prompt was read a book with blue on the cover, and also Into the Bright Unknown, which finished off the Gold Seer trilogy by Ray Carson. And I ended up giving both books 4 stars. Basically, for a quick summary, Leah Westfall, a girl with gold sensing abilities, heads out west during the gold rush, and these particular books detail her time settling in California. I enjoyed this series because it did not minimize the terrible shit people went through during that time, and unfortunately are still going through to some extent. She made it digestible, but she didn't exactly dumb it down for her audience, which is something I greatly appreciate. I did a series review, and I'll leave that linked. The next couple of books I finished up were The Grey Wolf Throne and The Crimson Crown, which were written by Cinda Williams-Chima, and I gave both 4 stars. And these 2 books finished up the Seven Realms series. This follows Risa, I'm never going to know her name, and Han as they attempt to bring together the Fells with an invading army on their doorstep, as well as their personal relationship. I enjoyed this series. I don't think it was groundbreaking by any stretch of the imagination, but I would recommend it as a beginner's fantasy series if you really wanted to dip your toe into something that feels very classically fantastical without having to read Lord of the Rings, which is a lot. Yes. So again, I did a series review, and I will leave that linked in this video. The next book I read was The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, which I ended up giving 5 stars, and it fulfilled the second prompt in the Water Tribe Avatar The Last Page Turner, which was read a book with water on the cover. Basically, we have 5 avatars that represent the 5 boroughs of New York, who are tasked with protecting both the city and the avatar of the city as New York tries to quote-unquote be born. Forces outside our realm that represent the worst of society attempt to keep that from happening. I personally love this book. I am not from New York, but, with the way people talk about it and its boroughs, I was always intrigued by what New York was. And so I think this book helped me better understand the people of the boroughs, because each avatar represents the persons who inhabit that borough. It also reminded me of Sense8, which I actually had to go back and rewatch that series after reading this book because I was just it reminds me too much. It's so good. But only a couple elements, like the avatars being born and things, and being able, being connected together. So it's not exactly like Sense8. There's just parts of it that remind me of Sense8. So the next book I read was my third and final prompt for the Avatar The Last Page Turner Readathon, which was Trails of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse, which I ended up giving 5 stars. And the prompt was read a book with an indigenous main character by an indigenous author. And basically this book is about an America in the future that has gone apocalyptic. The 5th world has died and the 6th world has been born. And the Dinate or Dinata and the Navajo were able to predict what was going to happen and prepare for it. And we follow our protagonist Maggie, who is a monster hunter, as she attempts, with help, to track down the makers of these brand new monsters that have sprung up. I really enjoyed this book. I was given a look at the beliefs of another people by an indigenous author, so I felt like I was getting a real look at the Navajo and their culture. It was also interesting to see Coyote in this aspect. I know in school we would talk about him sometimes in Native American culture, but to see it from a Native perspective was really interesting. When schools actually used to teach things and not just prepare you for tests. Okay, so the next books I didn't all read together, but I'm lumping them in like I do with most of the books that are in a series, which was part of the Lady Darby series, which goes Mortal Arts, A Grave Matter, A Study in Death, and A Pressing Engagement. And they're by Anna Lee Huber. And Mortal Arts I gave 5 stars, and then the other 3 I gave 4 stars. I have fallen in love with the Lady Darby series. I love the relationship between Lady Darby and Gage. They talk to each other like equals when they are investigating and even when they're not investigating. And while they do have like arguments and misunderstandings in their relationship, they actually end up talking to each other, shockingly enough, and like coming to understand each other. They're both very stubborn, so it takes them a while. But we don't get that misunderstanding trope that I hate so much. Like, we actually talk to each other like fucking adults. And it's beautiful and amazing, and I love it. And also, I just love the, like, growing romance between Gage and Lady Darby. It's just like, peak right there. A trigger warning for Mortal Arts. There is suicide mention, PTSD for both the military and terrible asylum conditions, and of course, death kind of flows throughout this entire series, but Mortal Arts was particularly nasty, I have to say. If this is a series where you're looking for smut, you're going to be sorely disappointed. Like, sex is mentioned, and passion is encouraged, but it is always like a fade to black situation. So if you get a little squeamish at smut, this might actually be the series for you. I don't hate smut, and most of the time I love it in my romance book, or in my romances. Not necessarily romance books, but like when there's a romantic relationship. But this time, I can kind of appreciate the fade to black situation. I think it works for the characters, and I think it works for the books. Also, in Mortal Arts, we do get, like, the stupid Gage has a fiancé. But for, like, it doesn't last long because Gage literally bursts in on Kira. That's Lady Darby's first name. And he's like, no, I reject this fiancé. We're going to end up together regardless. So, yeah, that trope gets played, but it doesn't last long, so it's great. And then a pressing engagement is a novella, and it's just about Kira and Gage's engagement, and it really doesn't last long, and it's just kind of like a quick, cutesy little break between the 4th and 5th book. So, like, not necessary, but a cute little interlude. The next book I read was The Island of Sea Women written by Lisa C., and I gave it 4 stars. It follows 2 young girls, Mija and Young Suk, who are studying to become Hanyo, or sea women. On the island of Jeju off of Korea, women make their living diving into the sea. Like, it's an honest career path on this island. They are particular to this island. Like, you will not find Hanyo anywhere else. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. I don't know how to pronounce that, unfortunately. The 2 young girls grow and marry, start families, as war descends on not just the island, but Korea and the world. It takes place, I forget, it's got to be the 20s or 30s, so it starts with Japanese occupation and goes up into World War II and beyond. But I distinctly remember the Japanese occupation, and then the World War II was a big part of it. The island is a strategic point and is so occupied by many troops, including Japanese and Americans. This is an interesting look at an actual microculture, and it also gives insight into what happened to people during World War II that isn't interpreted by Americans or Europeans. Like, there were events that happened. I don't know if Mija and Young Suk ever existed, but I appreciate that the author did her research. Like, there are events that happened during these occupations and during this war, during World War II, which I didn't know about. Okay, some, like, slaughter basically happens at times. Like, this is not a happy-go-lucky book. Just be aware. There's a lot of death and killing, and just And also, the Hanyo will sometimes, no matter how good they are at their jobs, will sometimes drown. Just so you know. And I mean, that happens with every job, but just be aware. This is not a book for the faint of heart. It is still fascinating. There's still lots to be gleaned from it, but yeah. And then the last book I read in the month of August was Scrappy Little Nobody by Anna Kendrick, which I ended up giving 5 stars. Basically, it's a memoir from actress Anna Kendrick, And it just gives a humorous take on her life from, sleepy Maine and her very normal suburban family, and how she wanted to become an actress, and all of her struggles and her working to get where she is today. And she does it with her humor. Just FYI, if you do not care for her or her humor, this is not going to be the book for you. I could very easily read this and I was like, oh yeah, I can definitely hear Anna Kendrick saying these things. So just FYI, be aware. But if you do like her and you like her humor, I recommend giving this a try. I've got the audiobook, which she also narrates, so I'm excited to see where this goes. Alright, well that's my wrap up for August. I hope y'all enjoyed. Let me know in the comments down below any of the books you might have read, or any of your opinions about the books or things like that, and I will see y'all next time.